Hello, you are listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira.
Hi, I'm Tammy.
And I'm Thomas.
And today we are talking about fear not.
Fear not.
For I am with you. To quote the Bible. You see where our first thoughts come from, don't you?
Yeah. What does it say? Be anxious for nothing, but in everything with prayer and supplication, present your request to God.
There you go. And
that's what I do. I fear, what is it? Be anxious about nothing. I'm always anxious about nothing. I'm just obeying the command, you know.
And I'm always anxious about everything. So,
yeah.
We're a good pair. So, yeah, it's interesting because, this is something that, our pastor talks about the number of times that appears in the Bible, and it's like far beyond a lot of the other commands, isn't it?
Yes. And, whether you're a believer or not is not the point. The fact is that in every walk of life, fear is a debilitating entity. It's something that pushes us off our goals and makes us not accomplish what we want to accomplish.
Right.
And one of the things that kind of struck me as I was preparing this episode, I was watching surf contests.
Yes.
Yeah, surf contests.
Yes, which is your favorite pastime that I hate.
Yeah, well, it's my new one. Yeah.
Yeah, because we are recording these in Idaho while we're visiting family.
Idaho.
And Thomas can't be physically surfing, so anytime we're in Idaho and he can't physically surf, he sits around and watches surf contests because heaven forbid we have a weekend of no surf consumption.
Or sports of any kind.
Yeah.
It's my last sport, since I went on my sports fast.
Yes.
It's interesting. What I find interesting is, I go to surf at my local break, and I see a lot of guys that do just really good moves like the professionals do, but they're not in the top 24. And I think what separates the men from the boys, in a sense, is that as athletes, they have a process of preparation that expels fear, so that when they go for that 360 reverse air, they're not thinking, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to muff this, and then I'm going to fall and hit the reef."
Right.
Which is what most of us think.
Right, and crash and pass out, and
Yeah, and then the paramedics will be trying
I'll
to revive.
wash up on the beach. And
He's dead, Jim. That was the purpose of Dr. McCoy on Star Trek, to inform Captain Kirk of when somebody was dead. I mean, it's got to be a physician that pronounces that.
Yeah.
But in this case, what you carry around in your head produces results, negative and positive.
Right.
And the reason for this, and well, let me strike that.
Okay.
Because I want to get to that later.
Well, we're not in court. There's no reporter, so you can just say, wait a
Please
minute.
strike that from the record. Yeah. So in when we're doing divorce, there's a lot of fear.
Right.
There are things that are acutely fearful, such as having court in an hour and a half.
Right.
And there's things that are chronic, that cause kind of that chronic fear or anxiety.
Right.
Such as worrying that that you won't be able to survive financially.
Right.
Or
you have to sell the house, or
a lot of people. I know that when I was in law school, I once had a really bad experience where I kind of freaked out at an exam, and what was going through my mind was, oh my gosh, I can't remember the answer to this question, and if I don't pass this exam, I'll flunk out of law school. If I flunk out of law school, I'll never get to be a lawyer. And if I don't become a lawyer, then, what am I going to do?
I'll be living on the street homeless.
I have a degree in political science, for heaven's sake. What am I going to do?
always a bad major choice in my opinion. But anyway,
Political science is phony major.
Yeah, it's kind of like this. The anxiety just the fear builds because it's like you said, it's oh my gosh, I'm gonna fail the exam, therefore oh my gosh, I'm gonna fail the class, therefore oh my gosh, I'm gonna fail law school, therefore oh my gosh, it keeps perpetuating itself.
Right, and you'll notice by my presence here that none of that happened.
He does have a valid law license in the state of California.
Yeah, it's been valid for 35 years.
Yes.
And I'm sitting in this beautiful little Airbnb in Idaho with my beautiful wife, and literally none of the things. In fact, I have to say this: that there are so many things in my past that I can think of that I was sure all these bad things that were going to happen, and how many of them actually happened?
None.
Close to none, right? I mean, a broken clock is right twice a day. But honestly, the things that you worry about generally do not happen.
Well, we have this illusion that by putting this energy of worry into it, if I just worry hard enough, I can prevent it from happening.
Yeah, isn't that a bad
and I don't think
delusion?
I don't think we consciously have that thought, but I think it's kind of it feels like if you're putting energy towards something, you're solving the problem, right?
Yeah.
So we feel like by worrying about it, we're solving the problem. And it's interesting if, I listen to and read a lot of self-development things. And, one of my favorite people on this kind of issue, our little Jack Russell is very excited and just came into the room. She's been outside.
Yeah. She's been waiting to hear this episode of anxiety. She's very anxious.
She is very anxious. That's funny. But I listen to a lot of Tony Robbins and read a lot of his stuff. And, one of the things he talks about is, what you focus on is where you put your focus and your energy is,
right.
What comes to pass. And so a lot of times things happen just because we're sort of having that self-fulfilling thing where we're you
worry yourself right into it.
Right, you worry yourself right into it, or again thinking you can control it, if you just like put enough thought into it. And that's absolutely not true. Where you're going to counter it is by putting your focus and your energy, like you said, into the positive part, into things going correctly.
Well, if you're living in a fearful, negative future, where are you not living?
In the present.
In the present.
Right.
And that's where you need to be.
Right.
As divorcing people, we need to be present for our children. We need to be present for our lawyers. That's very important. In the court, and we have to cooperate with our ex, and we have to figure out a way to make a living. There's a lot on the line there.
Right.
And if we're not careful, those negative images of the future will derail us from that, because they take us out of the presence and they rob us of our affection. I mean, when you have children, I mean, I raised 2 boys and helped to raise 2 more, and I can say this, that it's not just being there, but it's being present while you're there.
Right.
And the kids can tell the difference.
Yes, they can. And it's being present for them is being engaged and being focused, and like you said, not just. I remember so many times where I was doing something else. I was in the house, either washing dishes or paying bills or doing whatever I need, or getting things together for work the next day or whatever it was. And my kids would come in and want to play or do this or do that. And it would be like, I can't right now, I'm too busy. Mm-hmm. I can't right now, I'm too busy, because I was so preoccupied with being, getting ready for whatever I was doing, that it took me out of that moment. And I look back now and I really did miss large.
And you ruined your children.
And they're 26 and 30 now. And
they're producing the podcast.
I really missed
large. See how low they've had to stoop?
I really missed large chunks of their life in certain way, because I was so preoccupied with my own stress.
Yes. Yeah, and maybe even contribute to the end of the marriage, because people that are under a lot of stress are generally grumpy.
Have you been talking to my ex-husband?
No, I get that to experience that firsthand.
Oh, thank you very much.
That's
for that.
right.
That was not nice.
No, that wasn't nice.
But
she's a perfect angel, by the way. I just thought I'd let the people know that.
When you were talking about, the athletes, I mean, one of the things that came to my mind is I was reading a book and they were talking about how Michael Phelps prepares for races, and I think they talked to a combination of him and his coach or whatever, and he was talking about how he uses visualization to prepare. And so the night before, every night, he does this like every night before he goes to bed, he like visualizes the perfect race. Everything from when my feet hit the floor, the order I do things in, what I have for breakfast, what my workout is, how I drive to the
and you visualize
facility. Jennifer
Aniston.
What? No.
You don't?
No. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, you need to start doing that.
Wow. Okay. Now, I'm a big fan of hers in certain ways, but very different in other ways. But anyway, sorry,
I knocked you off.
Yeah, you did. You knocked me off topic. But anyway, and even just, traveling to the facility where the competition is going to take place or whatever, the routine he goes into when he gets there, the amount of time in advance he arrives, what stretching he does, what he, blah, 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 what he's listening to in his headphones while he's preparing, just the whole thing all the way down to the end of the race where, of course, he visualizes himself winning.
Right, by 2 milliseconds.
Right, or whatever it is. And so...
missed it by that much.
And so they, the idea of that is that you're putting these positive visualizations instead of sitting there and going, oh my gosh, what if I'm not fast enough? What if I, fall and hit my head before I dive into the pool? What if I, I don't know, whatever.
If I skip my Wheaties,
right?
My diet is going to slow me down.
Right.
Oh my goodness, I'm 3 ounces overweight.
Right. Right. Just worrying about things and stressing about them as opposed to visualizing a positive outcome. Yeah. And I think that's something we all struggle with. And unless you're one of those people that is intentional about it and has learned, over the years and stuff. But I think our natural human default tendency is to worry about all the things that could go wrong.
Yes.
Instead of focusing on what you have decided will go right.
Right. Yeah, it's like it's kind of like that parable, which is really a riddle, right. Which says, okay, imagine that you're inside of a box, and it's dark, and the box is made of titanium, so you can't break out of it, and it's got no seams, it's got no windows, it's got no doors. How do you get out of the box?
Stop imagining.
Stop imagining. Right? I mean, don't we put ourselves in a box?
Yes.
We put ourselves in a box by imagining all the bad stuff that can happen.
Right.
I have this experience when I go to court sometimes.
Right.
And in fact, going to court is a funny thing because there's always a little bit of the unknown, even if you're really experienced.
Right. Even if you're the attorney and not the client.
Right. Right. If you're the attorney, I mean, you can still, because there's a lot riding on your reputation mm-hmm. and your relationship to the client.
Right.
Clients hate when you lose. You get to hear. Then you have to do the debrief. Just messed up.
Well, and attorneys hate to lose too, in general. So
yeah, I hate losing. That's part of what drives me.
Right.
Really, that's a huge driving force.
Every one of y'all I've ever interacted with hates losing.
Yeah, it's competitive. It's like a basketball player.
Right.
But we imagine that something is going to happen at the hearing, and at the end of the hearing, it's over, and you realize it didn't happen. Or it didn't go the way, it never goes exactly the way you think it does.
Right.
Sometimes the concern that the court had was something that you didn't even think was going to be the court's concern.
Right.
And so you prepared this huge speech about, about what a no good the other party was. And it turns out that the real thing the court's concerned about is the distance between your client's home and the school that the child goes to.
Right.
And it's like, well, how are you going to get them to school? I don't know. I didn't prepare for
that. Yeah, there's always something that comes out of left field. And
I turn to my client and I say, how are you going to get the kid to school?
The client says, I don't know. I didn't prepare. You didn't tell me to prepare for that. But it's that same thing of like what you're worried about isn't the thing that's going to happen. And I hate to say this because it sounds so negative and I don't mean it that way, but it's the things that you aren't thinking about that are the tragedies that actually happen. Because let's face it, I mean, none of us are going to go through life without some sort of challenge or crisis or tragedy or whatever. That happens to all of us.
Right.
The key is in how you deal with it. And so, you sitting around worrying about certain things isn't going to control whether that thing does or doesn't happen. Back in 2014, my mom passed away at the age of 62 of a massive heart attack. I talked to her about 10 o'clock that morning, and 10 o'clock that night, she was gone. And I didn't see that coming. I wasn't expecting that. I mean, my mom hadn't been in fabulous health the last few years, but it wasn't anything heart related. And she had some chronic back issues and some things like that going on, but nothing that I thought, oh my goodness, my mom could die at any time. And then that's the thing that happens. And that's the thing that's in my lap that I'm challenged with, that I'm trying to, cope with. And so it's not that those things aren't going to happen. It's just that which of those things happen to you is beyond your control. And you especially cannot control it through having fear about it.
That's true. And you can imagine yourself all the way to a negative result.
Right.
Like, I think a lot of parental alienation, I have a hard time saying that.
Parental alienation.
A lot of those parental alienation cases really emerge from that fear. And basically you've got two people whose marriages are breaking up. So they've lost that relationship. And so the relationship they have left is their parent-child relationships. And one of them gets so anxious because, dad lives in a fancy house in, in Beverly Hills. I use Beverly Hills, but...
I think Beverly Hills is something that anybody anywhere in the country would know what you're talking about.
So they're going to that fancy house in Beverly Hills.
Right.
They've got they've got all they want. Whatever they ask for, they get. New surfboards, all the latest toys and whatnot. And I don't have the money for that.
Right.
So they're going to love him more than they love me.
Right.
And I think that's a lot of anxiety for a lot of people.
Yeah. And you know what? Honestly, I don't think that I have ever seen a case, to my knowledge, where the children wanted to be with one parent or the other out of what that parent could give them financially.
Right.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, and I used to worry about that.
Yeah.
I used to worry that the kids would like my ex-wife more than me.
Yeah.
And for a while there, it became like a competition, right? But it shouldn't be.
Right.
Because what children want is parents.
Right.
And to the extent that you can be present for the kids, they're going to love you. They're your kids.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think a lot of people do fear that they're going to like the other parent more or want to be with the other parent. I think that drives a lot of fear excuse me, for a lot of people. And so but it's interesting because if you sort of step back from this and you can kind of put yourself in your kids' shoes and think about, what's a similar dynamic for you? Well, a similar dynamic for you is, let's say you have at least two children. Many people do. If you only have one, then you may not be able to relate to this quite the same. But let's imagine that you had at least two children, and I ask you which one you love more.
And if you're anxious about it, stop imagining.
But what if I ask you which one you loved more? I mean, there's no way you can't. You love them in different ways. You don't love one. I have two boys and I have two stepsons, and with my two boys especially, it's like if somebody asks me who I love more, I mean, I don't love one of my boys more than the other. I have two granddaughters. Who do I love more? I don't love one of them more than the other. I love them in different ways. I have different connections with each child and grandchild just because of their personality, my personality, whatever. But I don't love one more than the other. And so really our fear of the child loving one parent more than the other in a way is fundamentally unfounded.
Right.
I think it's different. I'm sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. I just want to finish with this thought. I think it may be a little different if you're talking about an abusive situation. Certainly you don't want the children to be in situations that are unsafe and all that. But even if a child has a parent that's an alcoholic or this or that or whatever, my experience is that child still loves that parent.
Right.
There's not a competition for that love.
Right. So what I started this little segment off on was the parental alienation angle. I think that a lot of parents, what they do is they try to hedge their chances of the kid not liking them by maybe saying something negative or implying that the divorce was the other party's fault or something that aligns the children with them.
Right.
And that's something we see frequently.
Yeah.
And it's driven by fear.
Right.
So if you're doing that, don't beat yourself up.
Right.
Because it's driven by the fear response, and the loss of those relationships can be catastrophic for you.
Right.
So it's normal to be afraid, but we have to reframe the parent-child relationship and realize that you really get out of any relationship what you put into it. And if you can focus and be present, if there's some way to eliminate that fear so that you can go and dig holes in the sand or go to the basketball and give your kids a full-throated cheer, that's what they want from you. Right.
Right. And, remember, you can feel the fear, but that doesn't mean it's okay to act on it. That's two different things. That's what we're my daughter-in-law frequently says to my grandchildren, you can be upset, but it's not okay for you to, whack your sister, for instance. There's certain behaviors that are not okay. The feelings are okay. So we're not saying you're not going to feel fear around these things. But we're saying that you can do things to shift your focus, to reframe, to help reduce the fear. And then the fear that you're still left with, well, then your job in that situation is to not act on that fear.
Right. But in this episode, I want to talk about the cure. Because there is a cure.
Cool. Let us have it.
Yeah.
We want it.
First of all, we do need to live in the present. It's important to live in the present and to realize that the fears that you have about future events are A, not likely to occur.
Right.
And B, they're just that. They're thoughts.
Right.
And you can change your thoughts. You can think different thoughts. So live in the present. I mean, there's so much, I love to take photos on my iPhone because every moment is precious.
Right.
And, we all got together for Thanksgiving and I have tons of pictures. We had Piper's birthday yesterday and they were playing on the we took them to a place where
indoor play place.
An indoor play place, and we had the birthday party, and the kids just had a blast.
Yeah,
and it's really fun to just watch them. It's fun to watch little kids discover new things.
Right.
Like the first time I took the boys to the beach, and it was like, oh my goodness, look at that. And there's waves.
And sand and water.
And you can splash around.
And it's warm, yeah.
And it was just because I mean, I've been going to the beach all my life,
Right.
and it was like I got to experience it for the first time.
Yeah, because you take it for granted by this stage. You've done it so many times. And when you take the kids for the first time, then you're getting to see that new experience through their eyes.
Right. And by contrast, let's say I had court the next day.
Right.
What would I be thinking about, if it was my case?
Right.
That's what I meant, not because I have court every day.
Yeah, not court as an attorney, but court as a party to the case. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm worried about what the court's going to do with my family, and
Right.
I'm picturing all this bad outcome. And I totally miss the first day at the beach.
Right.
I miss it.
Right.
It goes. Whew.
Yeah.
So be present. Every breath you take is precious.
Right.
Don't live in the future. Live in the present.
Right.
And then the second antidote has to do with Michael Phelps, like you mentioned earlier, about how he visualizes success.
Right.
I think that's a lot of what, with elite athletes, what separates the men from the boys is their ability to see success in their mind's eye.
I have read that that is something that commonly children of successful parents, be that wealthy parents, is what I'm trying to say. And I'm not saying that's the only measure of success, but measures of worldly success.
It's just the most important.
There you go. I'm all about the money, you know me. But measures of kind of success in the world or whatever, as far as being financially successful or being athletes or CEOs or different things like that. They said one of the things that those people almost always teach their children that less successful or economically struggling families don't is this visualization practice of visualizing how you want it to be or how it's going to be in a positive way, as opposed to thinking of the fear of what could happen.
Right. And this can be really fun too.
Right.
It's like when, it's fun to go house hunting sometimes and just be a looky-loo and go through the models and go, wow, and just visualize. I visualize yourself cooking at that beautiful range, the kitchen, and having these beautiful decorations everywhere. And wow, this could be Johnny's room and this could be Janie's room.
I was going to say Susie, but...
Susie,
Janie, whatever you want to name your daughter.
Reagan.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just, it's really about the mindset and about, getting into that, consciously pulling yourself out of that state of fear and into a state of the possibilities. And honestly, you're teaching your children by doing. They're learning
Absolutely.
by watching what you do.
Absolutely. I think children are harmed by fearful, timid parents. Nothing you can do is just stand up straight. That sounds funny. I think we did an episode on that a while ago. But
I don't think we did. You said that before, but I don't think we did.
No.
I don't remember an episode
we need to
about
do
that.
stand up straight. Yeah, and that's from a book by Jordan Peterson called The 12 Rules for Life, or 12 Rules for something.
For living?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, Tammy's going to look it up.
You always pull these out, and then I'm trying to scramble and figure out what you're talking about.
But that's the first chapter of the book, and the idea is that if we hold our posture with confidence, that will actually change our mental state.
Yeah, it's 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson.
Yeah.
Tony Robbins talks about this too.
Yeah.
I've heard him talk about how if you'll just stand with your hands on your hips in like a commanding position like that, that it will increase the amount of testosterone in your body by like a really significant amount. I can't remember what it was. I don't want
that's
to
good. I could always use some more testosterone.
And I don't want to like throw out these weird, but I think it was something like, I don't know, 70%, or it was a really like amazingly high number, whatever it was. Go listen to Tony Robbins, maybe you can find it. But you know, he talks about how like if you have to give a presentation or that you're going into a situation where you're feeling kind of insecure and all that kind of stuff.
Let me see.
You put your hands on your hips and it'll increase your testosterone and it changes your physicality. And then it doesn't take long. It's like 30 or 60 seconds or something real minimal will make a huge difference.
Right.
And, you know, I think that happens in court too. It's like if you come in and you have all this negative mindset and your shoulders are down and drooping and you're kind of, you know, having this kind of like down attitude, you know, and then, you know, and the other person comes in and they're up and uplifted and confident and holding their head high and presenting themselves well and all this kind of thing, then, you know, that affects your credibility with the court.
Yeah.
Because if you seem like unsure or, you know, fearful or timid or whatever, you don't have the same credibility that you have when you're presenting yourself in a confident, poised manner.
That's true. That's true.
You know,
So, and finally, a big one is that people who understand their life purpose tend to be able to live in the present and tend to not worry as much. If you have a spiritual life, if you have a meditation practice, it can be very helpful to bring you into the present moment and help you to live what they call mindfully.
right.
You know, in my faith, it's, you know, Jesus says, consider the lilies, you know, nobody comes and feeds them, but they grow, and the birds, you know, nobody comes and tends to them, but they get their food. And God cares about us specifically as people. God loves the people. So if he's willing to care for the grass and the birds, how much more is he going to care about you? In other words, God's got this.
Right.
And I think that's a huge element in success, is that if you believe that God or providence or the universe or goodness or
Right.
Mother Earth, whatever it is that you believe,
Right.
is going to take care of it, you can be confident. And even when bad stuff happens, you know that it's part of the plan.
Right. Right. And that some good is going to come of it.
Right. Whatever
Yeah.
doesn't kill you, make you stronger.
There you go. I mean, it's interesting because we talk about this a lot from our own personal perspectives of, you know, 15 years ago, Thomas and I were both, you know, working corporate jobs in marriages that were absolutely miserable and falling apart, and both very, very full of fear. And, you know, we've had to learn how to push through that, how to create a new life, a blended family, you know, create the business and create all those things. And so that wouldn't have been possible if we had given into the fear.
True.
You know?
So live in the present, stop imagining, get a spiritual practice, and, you know, try to have a positive frame of mind. Try to replace,
Visualize.
visualize and replace those negative thoughts with positive ones.
There you go. All right. So we hope this episode has been helpful. If you're watching us on YouTube, you know what to do. Hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you get more videos as they're released. More videos. Yay. Also, podcast. You're listening to the podcast. Same thing. Rate, review, subscribe. That way you get notified when new podcasts come out. And we appreciate it because it helps us and helps get our rankings up. So if you could do that for us, we'd really appreciate it. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Divorce University online podcast with your hosts, Thomas and Tammy Ferreira. For more information, visit www.divorceuniversityonline.com.